Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of I Am Legion for Dying Light 1 and 2. My name is Jason, the creator, and I have another quick video showing you how to use the config inside the mod. I've been meaning to do this one as a standalone for a little while, had a couple other ones to get out of the way, but if you haven't checked out my install guide, please check it out. It will cover how to set up the mod inside your game, a couple of good to know things. Then additionally, I did a troubleshooting guide. Please check that out if you have any questions, if you're having problems with the mod. And soon I'll be doing a merge video as well to show you how to combine this mod with other mods on the Nexus. So let's dive into the config first. You've already downloaded the I Am Legion mod. You've run the installer. Everything is set up. You've got the icons on your desktop. We're starting from this point. Okay, so first we're going to go ahead and open this I Am Legion install path. Let's head over to the PH folder. Then source. Inside of there, you're going to have the data 2 installed. If you've chosen an optional, you may have a data 4 as well. If you have the Patreon content, you also have a data 4 as well. If you're a Patreon member, thank you guys so much for your support. I really appreciate your contribution. Back on script. So, for the data 2, so this is the I Am Legion mod, unless you've changed the number, but going off the idea that you've just installed the mod, you have a data 2 folder, or pack. Inside of here is the actual content for the mod. In order to be able to get access to this, we need to be able to open this. So what I would recommend is WinRAR or 7-zip. If you use either, you can get inside this pack file, but for some of you, it may not look like this. So you can see I have little icons that are associating this pack with an archive. To be able to get to this, you need to right-click, say Open With, and then whatever different archiving tool that you have, make sure to select that from the list. And to save time, you can go ahead and hit always on there as well. And from then on out, it will open just like this. So this is, once you've gotten past that step, this is what the inside of the mod looks like. So from here, easy enough, here's your config. And I'll go ahead and mention a couple of these other folders. As you come in and you're reporting bugs or other issues, at some point I may direct you into the mod itself. If I ever say go into the data2.pack, this is where I'm referring to. And the different folders that I'll reference, for example, if you go into scripts, inventory, here's all your inventory files. So as I'm referencing those locations, another common one, especially in the merge video I'm about to do, is going to be scripts, player, and then the player variables. Biggest one out there, most commonly modded file on Nexus for sure. And so this is a big one if you're ever trying to find this and figure out what's going on with your mod. So back on script again. From here, you want to get access to the actual config. So you can see here, I've associated this file with Notepad++. That's the reason that icon shows up. But for you, it probably just looks like a regular icon. The easiest way to interact with this file is to just go ahead and drag it out of the archive and throw it onto your desktop or a folder or wherever you want it. From here, you can actually say open with, and then go ahead and associate this with Notepad, Sublime 3, Notepad++, Visual Studio if you want, go to town. So whatever you associate it with, from then on out, it should open automatically inside your archive, and you can save time by not extracting it. I have noticed, I'll go ahead and mention this now, there is a couple of bugs that happen with archives where you go in here and you try to save one and the temp file doesn't properly update the archive. So I've had people come in before and say, hey, I modified this, and it's not working. Most of the time, the easiest way to fix this problem is to actually drag the file outside the archive, do your edits here, and then drag it back in. So I'll get to that here in a second. Let's go ahead and open the config. So based on the version that you've downloaded, this may have a couple of different things, but let's go ahead and I'm actually going to say, let me just drag this out actually. So from here, there's a couple of things. I've got comments up at the top that are specific to the version that you've downloaded and just some common notes. But please take a second and just kind of read through these notes. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can zoom this in a little bit so that you guys can read. There we go. Now, basically, I've tried to identify the different sections. I just recently did some cleanup here, so it's a lot easier to see the different sections by some of the formatting that I've added. It's not perfect, but with actual coded scripts, these become more difficult to actually add all the different, nice, clean, commented sections and then also execute that code inside the game. So \\\/ is the most common way to just line out that comment. And so you're going to see a lot of \\\/ throughout this file. Basically, the way I have this set up is that under each section, you have subsections of that content. So for example, when we have gameplay, under each one, you should see a location which tells you the actual file that this is being injected into. So if you have questions about, well, where is this going, just look at the location section and it's telling you where this script is actually being executed. So if you're ever curious about what you could do with your own mod, please follow my location instructions. It's telling you where that type of file can be located. So have fun with that. So for these different ones, as you're going down here, the most critical part of this is that these are actually exporting the actual value of these settings. So whatever you're setting here, it's actually just a giant config that is getting injected into the mod or into the mod files themselves further down inside the mod. So be aware, if you mess some of these things up, and I'm going to go through the steps here to identify this, you can cause the game to crash and have different problems. It'll be harder to identify when you're causing those problems. You'll get all sorts of weird little glitches. I had to take stamina completely out of this config because I got all these little tiny weird glitches all throughout the game. Made no sense. Turned out just couldn't do this type of injection with stamina. So you never know. But I am continuing to expand on this as we go. Please continue to let me know what you'd like to see inside the config. I'm expanding this and plan to continue to expand this long after this. So with each one of these, we have a couple of different types of files. So we have integers, known as ints, inside the file. We have float values. We've got Boolean values. We've got string values. And I think that's it. So a couple of things to know about that. It changes the actual end result. So in each one of these sections, for example, when you have an integer value, this needs to be basic. It needs to just be a number. And that can't have a decimal point. So if it's an integer value, do not add a decimal point and a 0. That will break the game, no longer work. As you go down these, some of them are stupid. Some of them on the back end actually are using string values, probably for networking purposes, I get it, but at the same time, they appear like floats. So just know that there are some of these, well, not just floats, there's true or false values, there's all sorts of things that you would think, that should be a Boolean value, that should be, something else. Trust me, I get it. However, how it is noted here is after painstaking hours of getting this working. Trust me, it works. So for each one of these, you need to be mindful of the type. So if it's a float, it needs a decimal value. So if you go in here and you modify this file and you go in here and do something like, I want to make it 7, and you remove that decimal point, broken. Game won't run, all sorts of problems. You're like, what the hell happened? It's because you removed the decimal point. So please be aware of the modifications that you're doing. I've tried to go through and document what the original default is as well, so that it gives you a basis for understanding if it has a decimal point, if it doesn't, that kind of thing. The only other flip here is that if it's a string value, it has to have these quotation marks around it. If these quotation marks are removed for any reason, it will break, things will go wrong. Just be aware. So if you see a string value, treat it as such. Just know it has to be wrapped in these quotation marks. If those disappear, it'll break. I do need to add those to the outside here as well, but I tried not to confuse people by also doing that too many times. It's inconsistent because there's so many different stages of this, but bear with me, continuing to document as we go. So about a couple of the different sections here, we do have interface options. We've got inventory, we've got gameplay, we've got experience, survivor sense, weapons, spawn density, spawn logic, AI spawn difficulty, AI behavior, AI fall height, dismember system, chase system, and cheats. I'm going to try to quickly summarize each section, so bear with me. I will try to also timestamp each one so that you can kind of get a gist of what I'm doing in each one. I'm not going into a lot of detail here, but just trying to summarize the best I can. Under each one, for some of these, I've tried to go in and list what I'm doing for Ultimate, what I'm doing for Survivor, and what I'm doing for Casual. These are not always true because of rapid editing and rapid fixes as these updates are coming out. Sometimes I have to double back and update these in post. That's just because we're updating so quickly now with so many of these updates hitting so quickly. So just be aware, just because it doesn't say the exact thing, just know I'm getting back to it. So as we continue down the list here, we have gameplay, which covers most of the common sections of the code. Most of this is going to be inside your player variables. A lot of those files are very common to what the player is actually having set on them. You can find most of that now under player variables. I do have this set to hard. However, it is also now inside player variables. This had to happen because something changed on the back end. Something's changed where I think they're getting ready to introduce a new difficulty. And so because of that, some things had to be adjusted to where this would work as expected. It was breaking things on normal and hard difficulties. It got weird. People were reporting bugs, so I had to adjust that. So these can now be found inside player variables and player variables underscore hard. If we go down, there's also a couple of these that kind of passively worked or did work at one time. Most of the time, I need you guys to help report what's not working and what is. I mean, please don't bog me down with it, but please also just give me a heads up, because some of these, like, they'll release 1.9, for example, like 2 days ago. And for example, looting will just stop working. Well, that's where they've updated something in the back end. I just need to know so that in the future I can either remove this or continue to change those values. I will say that unless they've removed that value from the actual script, there's not a lot of rhyme or reason of understanding why it's no longer working. It's just no longer working. So as far as my ability to go in there and fix it, we'll find out. Maybe I can do it in a new way, but that takes time. Next, we have our interface options. Underneath interface options, we have a bunch of icons that show up inside the 3D world. One of the key ones, is always going to be the screamer icon. So the screamer icon, moves around the map with the screamer. I do have this set up to where it's true for both Survivor and Casual Survivor. On Ultimate Survivor, it's turned off. I think that's way more fun because it also reduced the number of screamers in the game. So because of that, it's way more freaky when you run into one out of the blue because they're less common compared to vanilla. I actually can't believe how many are in vanilla. There are so many screamers in the base game. I can't believe it. So moving down, we have our inventory. Underneath inventory, this basically replaces all inventory mods that are on the Nexus. Here you can set the inventory size, the amount of items. You can set weapon slots, equipment slots, consumable slots, ammo slots. You can also go in here and set your storage. So if you want to go in here and change the amount of storage that you have, just know that I have not gone in here and done min-max, kind of maxing out values to find out what breaks the game. So just know that if it's all of a sudden not working, that may be because you've set a value too high or too low and it's broken everything. I don't know I don't know the ranges for everything. So please just report if it's breaking and the value that it's breaking at, just so that I can start to add some cap-offs to some of this. In experience, we currently only have night experience. I've recently found a bunch of stuff, especially with some of the changes that are coming with the perk system and everything that I want to go back and change. So an overhaul for the experience system and the config will be coming soon. Please bear with me while it's very limited because I had to remove some of this due to a couple of issues and bugs that were happening earlier. The Survivor Sense. So this is my latest large list of things that have changed in the game. Survivor Sense is something that I don't like wall hacks, and so I removed it from the mod for a little while. Well, I've recently reintroduced it back into the mod, as I know some quests require it to be able to figure out where things are, kinda. So because of that, I did put these in. There are 2 locations for these settings. So this is one of the few that has a location 1 and a location 2. But underneath here, you can set the cooldown time before you can use it again. You can set the range, the opacity, how long it happens. You can set how long, it can detect AI. So for example, if you don't want to have any AI, you can just set this to 0. If you don't want it to go through floors above you, you can set that lower. I think 4 is a pretty good balance, but it was at 10, so you could kind of look up through the floors. Didn't like it. So anyway, loot, this is a big one for all the quests and all these other things, but then also icons. So these icons are also for the loot. I've broken it apart by the different categories. So if you want to go in here and really go ham on your gameplay and Survivor Sense, you can. Lots of options here. Please let me know your feedback. Let me know if some of these things aren't working. And as we go through the updates, what breaks, what doesn't. Weapons section. So underneath the weapons section is one of the key ones from the latest update that everybody was upset about was the weapon bounce. So underneath here, for example, is the weapon bounce reactions. You can go in here now and based on the blade or the category of weapon, you can determine whether or not it ever has the bounce effect very quickly. So for example, if we want to make sure that blades never bounce off of zombies and always pass through, all you have to do is set this back to 3. Now, I would like your guys' feedback because I currently have this disabled in the mod, but now with the new version, with the new physics, maybe it's fun. I don't know. So if you want the bounce back as default, let me know. I'd be happy to switch that back. We also have things like explosives. I've gone through and I didn't get all the locations for these. There's quite a few different settings for explosives. Those can be found here. Like reaction to explosives are here as well. Damage modifiers are here as well. So these are overall damages. This actually probably needs to get moved up to general. I'm not sure why it's down here. It probably got lost in translation. I'm actually going to go ahead and move it, and hopefully I'll see my notes and we can get that fixed. But we'll go ahead and add this right here up at the top because everybody wants to adjust that. So that's a good one. Oh, wait. Apologize. Note to self. And see, there we go. We just made another update to the config. So back down, I promise it takes much longer to actually write all this code than it does talk about it. That's why we don't have formal documentation just yet. My God, my document list. Have you guys seen that changelog? Anyway, spawn density. So in the spawn density section, this is where you're actually setting the amount of zombies that are spawning into the world. I've got these broken apart by 2 categories, interiors and then the actual open world. So as you're going throughout the world, I tried to balance these out based on difficulty, but basically the interiors, I also have them set up by zones. So if you go over here and look at, just to briefly talk about it, if you look at the installation zip that you received when you downloaded the mod, there's this DL map zones. Inside of here are some basic information that you should know. So for example, with density, if you are inside of a zone that is owned by a base, it has less density than one that is more rogue or wild. So in this case, Zone 3 and Zone 4 of the first city are Zone 3 is owned by bandits. Zone 4 is what I've now called an infected zone. And so the highest densities in the map can be found here. Same is true for the second city. If you go into these other areas that are not claimed, the density is supposed to be higher versus ones that have bases. Also with ones and bases, I've also tried to make the infected based on the actual infected that should be dead in that area. For example, at the wharf, if you go inside the interiors, you should find more dead PK from where they've been trying to take back the city. So a couple of story building elements built into that. And then of course, flooded is just absolutely flooded. But the idea is that you have less density here. And as you get into these regions, you have higher density. Okay, back to the map, or back to the config really quick. That's the setting for interiors. The same is true for open world, that you can go in here and set this by day and set it by night. The idea is that the lower you set these under the open world, the higher the count. So if you go in here, for example, and just start setting these to like 1 on all of these, you will get way more zombies during the day. If you set them up to like 5, you'll get less zombies. That can be really useful if you are trying to get better frames. I know that for a lot of people, the zombie count is actually causing a lot of frame loss. And so because of that, if you are getting poor frames, a good way to increase frames is to go in here and turn this up, especially during the day. During the night, I think they have more set up to where your view distance is less and that kind of thing. So maybe your frames at night are better anyway. So currently, I've got those set to where you have less zombies during the day, more at night. I do have a large number of zombies inside the game. Last time I calculated, it was around 7 to 8 times the vanilla amount. So that can affect frames, and it also drastically changes the gameplay. If you don't like any of that for any reason, feel free to set these to whatever you prefer. Go to town. Spawn logic. So under the spawn logic, these are very specific. So for example, with this first one, this is determining how close the screamers are. So if you wanted to have more screamers inside the game, all you have to do is lower the amount of distance in between. The idea behind this is I felt that screamers were basically, overkill, that as soon as they screamed, it basically forces you to go back to the base, and it's also pretty much death for most people that are trying to play at night. So because of that, screamers have been set to a lower level so that when you do encounter them, it's like, oh crap, now I have to fall back to a base. Well, if they're set off. The dynamic spawn logic, basically I've gone through by each human group here, and you can determine how many of these would spawn into any given area. This kind of is different for each part of the map. They've disabled parts of this code for certain parts of the game, so you will sometimes get weird results, but I like to think that this is the best thing for randomization in the game. If you turn this off, I promise you it's going to get a lot more dull very quickly. But if you do like only zombies in the game, one of the best things you can do is go in here and actually lower the amount of bandits, survivors, renegades, peacekeepers, etc., and that will help greatly impact the number of humans that show up in the game. Additionally, we have AI spawn difficulty. Here you can go by tier and actually set up each individual tier of difficulty. So say, for example, you want the game to be very hard from the start. You can actually go into tier 1 and actually go in here to the min and the max and say, okay, for tier 1 zombies or enemies, I actually want that to be all the way up to 9. And so then, from the start of the game, you should get a good mix of zombies and humans throughout the world. I've had varying results with this. Please let me know what you're seeing. This changes kind of as the game is updated. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, so please keep me posted. I also have some modifiers here for setting the zones based on the actual city. So for example, the early zone is the first map, city is obvious, flooded area, and then the in-game content, that's after you've beaten the game. So because of that, you could go in here and say early game. You don't actually want the early game to have any higher level difficulty characters or enemies. You could drop that down, and supposedly it will help modify that. The same is true of the next section, which is the difficulty tiers. Basically, it's that min and the max for each zone. You can set these additionally to make these cities more dangerous or more friendly, kind of based on your gameplay. Same is true of the actual gangs throughout the city, so the different missions that are associated with the bandit gangs. You can go in here and actually set up these tiers and have that based on how you want it. AI behavior. This is a big one because a lot of people ask this question because of the zombies inside the game. So what I'm currently doing, and there is currently a bug with the Fresh Dead, where Fresh Dead will currently run in the game no matter what. I had to disable that because it turns out that they were causing some of the issue with the blob creatures in the game. Had to move fast, remove those for now. That should be fixed in a coming update. But the idea is that if you want to go in here and set the biters to be able to run, all of them, you can actually just go in here to every single one of these and just copy runner and replace walker. And what that will do is it will turn every biter in the game into a runner. And if you want them to be able to climb, then you need to be able to go, oh, went too far, apologize. If you want them to be able to climb, there's the climbing settings, and in here, there's actually a config. You have to read the settings over here, but to get them to climb, you actually have to use biter ultimate. So you can use fresh, that one works as well, but for each one, they kind of have their own different settings. So for the ones that jump in between buildings and that kind of thing, those are going to be ultimate, versus the ones that are fresh, they can only climb, and they can also jump very short distances, like super short. I don't even know if they, with the latest version, they can even jump. So they can only really climb, so it does limit them a little bit. There's also the Nightwalker setting here, which I have not turned on by default, but if you do want biters to be able to run during the night and walk during the day, You can set that up here by simply setting these to Nightwalker under the biter section. So for biters being able to climb and biters being able to run, all you have to do is go in here and set them to runner in Nightwalker, and biters will climb and run during night and walk during the day. Pretty fun. I haven't balanced that enough to feel comfortable dumping that on everybody's lap, and so I've kind of left that one as is for now, but if you do want to add that to the game, feel free. You also have the infected damage. Here's the most common values here where you can go in and set the amount of damage. This is for when you run past a biter and they take a swipe at you, how much damage that'll do. I've got that set a lot higher because you shouldn't be on the ground. You should be up high. If you're on the ground, you're probably going to die with the amount of biters that I have in the game. That's so that you're more strategic when you actually go down on the street, so you're not just running around carefree, because the game is meant to be more challenging this way. If you're grabbed by biters, this is the amount of damage that can be done. And basically, because of the mini game that you press the button over and over to break free, I've set this higher so that way you can actually break free and get away, and this amount of damage won't be applied. But basically, you get like 2 bites before you're dead. Goon movement. So for those of you that do not like the goon being able to run down the street, all you have to do is go in here and remove the runner part of that, and it will turn them into walkers. With the enemy grouping system, this is basically a generic value that I'm not really sure if it's still working based on the documentation, but it's basically how many enemies can group together and continue to fire the join ally code before it turns off, kind of thing. So I think the lower you set this, the less they'll band together. I have this set higher because I like it when everybody works together. AI fall heights. This is now important for the zombies falling off the walkways and the railings and the rooftops. One glitch I did find here is that yes, they allowed the zombies to go off edges. Yes, my mod does allow them to go off edges. However, there's like some hard-coded logic in there that's instantly killing the zombies once they fall a certain height regardless. So these values kind of work. So I'm still trying to figure out why these don't always work, but I was testing the other day and I did notice that there is a certain height on some buildings that I don't know if it's collider based or what's going on there, but it will pretty much instant kill them as they fall towards the ground long before they actually hit the ground. So still looking into that bug. Below that is actually the fall height for the player as well. So if you actually want to go in here and set what heights are appropriate for your player as he runs through the city, that can also be found here. Almost there, guys. So the weapon drop logic, this actually determines whether or not the humans can drop their weapons as you go through the game. So as you're playing the game, if you want certain groups of the enemies to actually drop their weapons, if you find that more realistic, you can go in here and set this here. I currently have it turned off across the mod because so many people started reporting that the streets were literally littered with weapons. But if you want to turn this feature on, feel free. That's why I left it here. And you can go in here and say, for example, I want every renegade to be able to drop their weapons. To be able to do so, all you have to do is set this to 1, and now all renegades will drop their weapons when they die. It can be a lot of fun, but it can also be a little cheaty if you don't like that kind of gameplay. I also have a switch here that turns on everyone to drop their weapons. So if you don't want to go by different class, you can go in here and set it for all humans, and everyone will drop their weapons when they die. That can definitely lead to a lot of cheating moments. Dismember system. On the dismember system, this one's been in for a long time, but it's recently updated because I've provided more code. The human system for this is basically this code is what's setting up the ability to cut off more limbs off the biters before they die. As a vanilla, if a biter loses both their arms, they instantly die. Didn't like that, so I've removed that code from the game. You can actually hack off all their legs and their arms, and they'll still be able to live. So have fun with that one. If you want to be able to go in here and change the values at which their arms can be removed, their heads can be removed, legs, you have all of those options right here. And then you also have a true and false value that you can set that determines whether or not they die when it's destroyed. So for example, I don't know how well this one works anymore, but if you wanted them to not die when you lopped off their heads, technically you could set this to false and have fun with that. I don't know if that still works anymore, but it did very early on in the game. For humans, Some of you have recently reported that arms are getting cut off humans and that they're not dying. That's by design. I've recently injected code in that makes them flee when they lose an arm. And then also I'm working on code that will cause them to bleed out over time. Currently, it sounds like someone just reported today that that's not working, that basically you can cut off their arms and they continue to stick around. I'm not sure yet whether or not that's true of all humans or if it was a specific use case, what that issue was. But basically that code is still getting improved. But the idea here is that if you wanted to turn that back off, you could go here to arms and set that to true. I have set it up for the legs because when you turn that to false, they didn't properly set up the animations really to cause them to crawl if they lose their legs. So you basically, they'll just get back up and chase you down without legs. It's kind of funny, but definitely immersion breaking. This is true of virals, infected, biters. You can go in here and set these to true and false, have fun. Some of them work better than others, but you do have options. One of the biggest sections is the chase system. So the chase system basically determines how many of the different creatures spawn. So this is my custom code that at the start of a chase, you have the potential for different enemies showing up when a chase begins. This is balanced based on difficulty. So for each difficulty, you have a couple of different settings here. But the idea is that if you wanted to go in here and set it up to where always one Banshee spawns, one Charger spawns, one Goon spawns, one Demolisher spawns, and one GRE experiment spawns, you can actually just go in here and set these things to 1. Let's throw a Spitter in there as well. And that will cause them all to immediately spawn as soon as a chase starts. If you want more diversity, which those are always more fun, makes the world feel a little bit more alive, you can actually leave these things at 0 and change the max. And so what that does is it has the potential to spawn. And so that can be a lot more fun because sometimes some things will spawn and then other times they will not. Down below this is the actual chase and all the different point systems and all the things with the volatiles. Some of these things are hard locked. They've kind of hidden away the chase system inside the code. I still don't have access to actually setting these things up of like what spawns once a chase begins. All of those creatures that are popping out of the rooftops and all that good stuff. There's not really a good way that I've found yet to expand that list of creatures that can come out of the vents. I have a couple of things that I want to test, a couple ideas, but I'm still not sure that that's working as expected. But in this section, you can go in here and determine how many virals spawn, how many volatiles spawn. There's a co-op section, so if you're playing them for co-op, these are the ones that will affect whether or not these happen on co-op, and if they don't, I currently have it set up to where the game is more difficult on co-op. I don't think it should be easier if you're playing on co-op with your friends. And then also view distances, intensity times, all that good stuff can be set right here. So for example, if you don't like where, for example, once a chase begins, I've got it set up to where even if you go into a small UV post, like you go into a small house that has UV lights, that doesn't mean that the chase will end if they're all stacked outside the door and they know you're in there. So for example, you can use the balancing here to kind of change the end delays. You can change the delays after you're under UV. So you could make it, for example, as soon as you get under the UV lights, the chase ends. I mean, there's all sorts of things you could do here to balance the game how you want it. So, feel free and set things up, enjoy the game. And then lastly, oh my God, losing my voice doing this video. Lastly is cheats. Here you can set God mode, and then infinite stamina works sometime and then sometimes doesn't. But these are great for taking screenshots and playing the game and testing things inside the world. I'm not really encouraging cheats with the mod. I'm mainly trying to encourage realistic gameplay with the mod. And so because of that, I don't have a lot here, but you can use what I do have. Okay. So that is the entire config list. And again, I promise you, there's probably easily over 100 hours spent working on this config. I mean, definitely over 100 hours for sure. It takes a lot to balance these things. Please report any issues that you're seeing. One of the easiest way to find issues with this as you're going is I'm gonna add this link or the location for this for these files to the actual video description. But down below, you will see that they have a Documents, we'll go all the way through. We'll go to My Docs. So it's under Documents, Dying Light 2, Out, Logs, and underneath there, every single time you run the game, it creates a crash log. I also have this under troubleshooting, so if you're having problems, more information can be found in the troubleshooting video. Underneath the logs file, you can actually open these up, and inside of these files, you'll actually find when you made an error with the config, at least hopefully. If you've made a blatant mistake, it should show up in this config. And what that should show up as, let me see if I can find the one that I used in the troubleshooting guide. I think it's this one. If we type in error, there is one that is, there's two that are caused by the mod that are resource packs. But if we go down a little bit further, there's another one that should show up that is the syntax error. Dang it, it's not this one. What I can do is hopefully just type in syntax. Well, I had one that I was using earlier that it showed up, but maybe it's moved further down. Here we are. So here's an example of a syntax error that shows up due to improperly changing and labeling your code or whatever the issue may be. It will tell you which line it's occurring at, and if you make a mistake on this config, it should show you that it's inside the config and at what line that's occurring. This is a great way to make sure that you didn't make any mistakes by accident, because I promise you, you can set certain ones on here and it actually be broken and the game not crash, and you never know until you actually encounter hey, this doesn't feel right. So I would encourage, if you've heavily modded the config, next time you run the game, it doesn't hurt to go to this location and just open that crash log and search for syntax or search for error, and just make sure that nothing's popped up there, because if you've made a minor mistake and it is causing an issue, it can come out later in weird ways. So just be aware of that. One thing I also mentioned in troubleshooting, if you are using the logs, and these are the things that I'm usually asking for the most, are the log files. If you see this bad CRC data, that's just saying that you have mods installed, and so data 2 is I Am Legion Reborn, not a problem. Your game data is not corrupt, it is just where this is an earlier log. Multiplayer is not disabled. This is very specific to Dying Light 1. For a short time there, multiplayer would be disabled. I can't remember if they've turned that off or not. There was a good while that they actually banned multiplayer modded modes, or mod support. So I think that's from that generation. All right, guys, this was a super long video. I'm going to go ahead and cap it off here. Hopefully this helped. Pretty much crawled through everything. This will continue to update and change over time, but one of the things, for example, is please read some of the comments. I've tried to add some tools in here for you guys to be able to navigate this easier and to use this file. Please let me know your feedback. One thing I will show you is that after you've done all this and you have the mod set up how you want, ignore all these extra windows that I brought up. With your data 2.pack, if we go back to our install directory and we open our data 2 back up, or if it's still open like it should be, you can just take that modified file and drag it back into your archive and replace it. And that's it. That's all you have to do. It should be updated inside the mod, and you should be able to use those new configurations. Please don't forget to bring it back inside the mod. If it helps, you can actually delete this once you drag it out, just to remind yourself to drag it back in, because the game will not work without this config. So it's a great reminder that you left it out. But just please be aware of these things before reporting any bugs. I look forward to discussing with you guys what your settings are. I will mention that on the Discord community, I do have a section that is designed for sharing your different configurations. So if you do have a configuration that you would like to share, a couple of awesome people on the Discord channel have gone in and actually created their own changes and their own settings, and feel free to call these your own difficulty or your own settings, and share those with the community so we continue to build the community and have new experiences inside the game. All right, guys, thank you guys so much for your time. Hopefully this helped. I look forward to talking to you guys again here soon. Happy gaming, and catch you guys next time.